Hi everyone, welcome back to another lightsaber video. This is Luke Skywalker's Return of the Jedi V3 lightsaber. This is the stunt hilt that was used in the duel against Darth Vader at the end of the film. The hilt itself is from Dave P's 2024 run of V2 and V3. As always, I'll leave links in the description of Dave Parkin's website. I believe that run is completely sold out now, but I'm sure the V2s are sold out, but there might be some spots for V3 as of today. So if you want one of these, don't wait too long because they are absolutely gorgeous. I have previously done a review of the V3 in the production style. So today we're going to be focusing more on the post-production one and the differences between them. So it's essentially the same hilt, just in a different point of time. So this is likely what it looked like during filming. I won't go too much into detail on this because I've already covered it in a previous video. But the production V3 was finished by Dave himself. He did all the paint and weathering, did a fantastic job. It looks gorgeous. I will just mention one thing you might have noticed if you've watched a previous video. I've now got this Otis style clamp card on it, as opposed to what I had in the video, which was a vector board, just like the Luke Hero. I've decided to switch it back to the Otis. This has been a source of some controversy recently. People couldn't decide if what we were seeing on screen was actually this hilt or a resin copy. There were sort of two camps, some who believed that the V3 should have a vector board, some who believed it should have an Otis. Overall, it appears that the majority agreed that the V3, the metal V3 during Return of the Jedi had an Otis style, almost like the Graflex ESB sideboard. So I've switched it back just to be possibly more accurate. But there is no confirmation. They're really not very good photos of this during filming. But with that out of the way, we're just going to focus on the post-production one today, and then I'll do a comparison in the end. So in post-production, so years after filming, they decided that the hero, Luke's hero, would be the main, like the official representation of the Luke Skywalker lightsaber. So they took the V3 and they kind of modified it to make it look as close as possible to the hero, which is why it was cleaned up. And by cleaned up, they literally just put some chrome tape around parts of it just to make it look a little cleaner. I'm sure these were parts that were either very rusty or had lots of sort of debris or paint left over. So they just covered it up with chrome tape, like on the clamp here, down under the booster section and on the pommel. They also repainted the neck. You can clearly see the paint during filming was kind of chipped and it resembled the V2. It looks like they've repainted that into a kind of a more reddish coppery look to bring it more in line with the hero. And lastly, they changed the clamp card from this Otis style board to something that looks again like the hero with just horizontal tracks. This was a piece of brass with strips of electrical tape cut out and covered. And that's mainly it. I mean, this is the post-production look. This is how we see it in various exhibitions and tours, like in the Mom Tour. And it was also how it appeared when it was loaned to NASA, as it went aboard one of the space shuttles. And hence why it has this little tag here that says Luke Skywalker's Jedi lightsaber. It has a little serial number stamped over here between the pommel cubes. So this is how it looked in the NASA promotional pictures. And this is why Dave has dubbed this representation of the V3 as the NASA V3, whereas this is known as the throne room V3. So that's just a quick kind of overview. So I'm just going to sort of pan down it. So I'll remove this label so we can get a better look. I will just say right now that this was not done by Dave. So the hilt is obviously Dave's hilt, but all the weathering, the physical damage, the paint, and all the finishing touches were done by a good friend of mine, Martin Brogan. I will also leave his information linked in the description. Martin's done a fantastic job with this. He's previously done one of my other V3s, but his attention to detail is incredible, down to the label, which I asked him to include. Okay, so I'm just going to start top to bottom as usual. I really like that Dave's emitter ring is accurate, the size of the hole. Obviously this is static, so in some of the more FX friendly ones, this hole needs to be bigger to accommodate a blade, but that's not how it looked in filming because the blade was obviously just a thin rod. So this is more accurate. So not much here, just a little bit of chemical weathering to darken up the metal, the chrome tape, and then I'm just going to zoom into that because that is incredible detail, and it matches what Dave has done with the production one. All that irregular sort of layers of paint, which is a result of the casting process, I'm sure. But both Dave and Martin did this by hand through, I'm not really sure what they used. Was it just layers of paint or bits of JB Weld? I forgot to ask Martin how he did this, but it's incredible. Really like the color on this, the shade. If I just zoom out a little bit, you could probably see a bit better that it's a sort of a dirty reddish copper look. Then we obviously have the casting seam, which is physical. There are dents on both sides of the grenade section. That again matches the production. Martin drew my attention to the presence of some air bubbles on the grenade section, which he included. I mean, such a tiny detail, which I would have totally missed, to be honest, but fortunately there's an abundance of reference photos of the post-production model as opposed to the other one. So it is possible to get this highly accurate to how it looks today. Obviously in the right hands, so someone like Dave or Martin would do an incredible job, among others, of course. Moving down to the clamp. This clamp is an original vintage Graflex clamp. It is the Fulmer variant. That's what I've used on both of them. So it's a late Fulmer. Here you can see the sort of the not so small and rounded rusty lever pin like the early Fulmer, but also not as highly machined as the ink. It's the same one here, although in this one, when I bought this clamp, it had already lost a lot of its plating. And I took one look at it and thought that looks very much like the V3 as it appears today, because that one has a lot of plating damage and rust. It doesn't, I mean, the pattern is not exactly like it, because that one is even more over here, but for the most part over here, it looks very similar. So you didn't actually have to do anything on this. I didn't have to paint it or rust it, or it's all 100% real on the lever, which is brilliant. The rest of the clamp, of course, the 3 circles are drilled. and it's covered in chrome tape, and that portion is cut out there, which is accurate to the prop. As I mentioned before, a little piece of brass with strips of black electrical tape. The booster section is very darkened compared to the original. And then there's a strip of chrome tape over here. Again, some more chemical weathering down in the pommel cube section. And a vintage D-ring, which is accurate to the V3. And then some other details like, as I mentioned before, the serial number. Mostly, I was very impressed with all the dents on the pommel cubes. So there's this mystery circular mark, which is on the other one as well. I'll show it in a minute. And just a lot of dents and damage on the pommel cube, which what I did was I sent Martin lots of pictures of this one, and I asked him to try to match them as close as possible, because it would make sense for both to kind of preserve that continuity. So yeah, vintage D-ring, vintage Fulmer clamp. This custom card was made by Martin. That's it really. What I'll do now is I'll compare both side by side. So we'll start at the top. So in my right hand here, I've got the production V3. You can see there's more paint present on the emitter. In post-production, probably they just scratch that off to make it look more like the Hero. As I mentioned before, the paint on the neck is different. The production is more of a yellowish copper paint that is chipped and looks more like a little bit more like the V2. The post-production is a reddish copper that looks more like the Hero. Not much changes on the grenade, but you could see that this had been cleaned up a little bit on the grenade section, again to try to bring it more in line with the Hero. Whereas this one is a lot dirtier. There's a lot of residue of the old black paint, because this would have been Obi-Wan's stunt hilt from A New Hope. So it would have been black. All of the grenade would have been, even all these rings would have been completely black. So they removed most of it for filming Return of the Jedi, but I don't think they didn't worry too much, because most of the time it was in his hand. You wouldn't have seen it anyway. Whereas in post-production, they probably just sanded off whatever was remaining. The clamps are the same. I even went as far as to hunt down for two late Fulmer clamps so that they perfectly match in terms of the finish and the size of the lever and the lever rivets. But the production one was a nice, clean one in good condition. My post-production one, as I mentioned, it had plating damage. The circular holes, the cutouts match. Just the post-production was covered in tape. And the big difference is always going to be the clamp card. On the right hand side here, the production one is strongly believed to be an Otis style board. Again, there's no confirmation of this because we don't really see it clearly. But we know for sure that the post-production one is this brass card. Booster section, the same. This one is a lot darker. The metal just darkened over time, naturally. And the pommel cubes, for the most part, match. You can see here, just after the D-ring, the cubes to the left have these little sort of dents there to the side. That's the same over here. Some sort of dents here on the side of the cube. And generally more sort of chips and wear. Cracks. This circular mark here, this tool, this machine, I don't know what it is. It's a mystery, but it's present on both. This one obviously has a serial number which is not present on this one. And the D-ring is a match. Pommel's about the same, isn't it? Okay, that's as far as compare. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit because there we go. Right, so once again, Luke Skywalker, Return of the Jedi, V3, dueling stunt. This used to be Obi-Wan Kenobi's stunt hilt in A New Hope, or one of them. It was repurposed to be the dueling stunt in Return of the Jedi. We don't really see very clear pictures of it during filming, unfortunately. But a lot of what we know about the production one is from the resin and metal copies that also exist, and some of them exist today. A lot of what we know about it is also from how it ended up looking in post-production, but it was drastically changed, particularly with the paint job and the addition of the chrome tape and the change of the clamp card. So that is it, really. Any questions, as usual, feel free to drop a comment down below. Otherwise, I'll leave some links for Martin, for Dave. Thank you both so much, Dave and Martin, for this beautiful, beautiful hilt and addition to my collection. I will be adding it to my Luke shrine. I now have the Hero in 3 different styles, the Yuma, I see you have constructed a new lightsaber, and the post-production Cave one. I have 2 styles of the V2, the post-production one, as it looks today, and the Sandstorm, which I recently reviewed. It's kind of an early production, and I have both V3s, and most of these come from Dave, really, so very, very pleased with his work. Yeah, thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.